Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello and welcome to another illuminating episode of Authors on Mission podcast, the podcast committed to diving into top-tier insights and strategies employed by established experts who have written books in their field. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and today I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Shellie R. Warren to our show. Shellie has been a full-time writer for the past 25 years, with bylines in over 70 publications. She has a candid, conversational style that has earned her devoted readership, especially in the realms of relationships, intimacy, and personal growth. Beyond her writing, Shellie has worked as a certified marriage coach for 20 years and a doula for 15 years. Today, we're going to be discussing many of her books, including Inside of Me, Lessons of Lust, Love, and Redemption, Inside of Me 2.0, My Story with a 20-Year Lens, and a whole new book, Pure Heart, A Woman's Guide to Sexual Integrity. So we're going to be touching upon all of those and the writing style as well. And without further ado, Shellie, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. You have just amazingly candid and insightful tips in every one of these books. I've looked through one of them and I'm just very excited to dive in. So before anything else, I want to know a little bit about, what led you to writing your first book, and, how did you develop the courage to share such personal experiences so openly, and how has that shaped your career?
So my mom has said two things about me as it relates to being a writer. She said my favorite toy as a child was shaking newspaper, and she's like, oh, I'm a writer. And then she also said there'd be many times she would run off. Like if I'm away talking to somebody, she'd be like, I would leave those people because there's no telling what you'd be saying. So that speaks to my personality, right? Always been kind of candid and direct. So I think writing was always like my calling, but it was 2000 when I decided to really take it seriously. I had gotten fired from the only job I'd ever had. But I hated that job with every fiber of my being. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, you're too old to just work jobs. Like, why don't you find a job in your field? And it was kind of ironic because I used to do customer service for the Tennessean in Nashville, which is a major newspaper. And then years later, I became a columnist at the Tennessean. So that was like hilarious to me. She kind of spoke that. As far as how my book became born, because I didn't really have any initial experience as a professional writer, I created my own internship, which is what I tell people. Like, I went to publications like, would you just let me write for free? Because I just need the byline. I just want to be able to say, I wrote for you. And that threw people off, right? Because unless they literally hire you as an intern who volunteers to write for free. But that's the first tip for a lot of people. Like, as long as when you're looking for a gig to write for, if they see you've written for someone else, they don't care about the backstory. They just want to know you've written for someone else. So in the midst of me, can I write for free? I pitched to a magazine called Relevant Magazine, which is a pop culture mainstream Christian publication. And at the time, they had a publishing company too. So initially they were like, I pitched writing about 4 abortions that I'd had. And that threw them, because again, they're a Christian publication. And they were thrown, not really so much because of the abortions, but how candid I was about saying I'd had them. And so I wrote an article for them called Mission Aborted. And then from there, I wrote a couple of more articles. From there, they said, would you be a columnist for us? Because we just think it's crazy how open you are. And then when they were getting used to some of my story, they said, which is very rare, we think you should write a book. So sometimes I feel bad for authors when they're like, well, what do you do about an agent? I don't know. That's never, as we talk more about the other books, that's never been my journey. Every book that I've written came to me. The third book, I did another route. We'll explain that in a minute. But that book came to me. So I got the advance. I wrote the book. One thing people ask me often, how long it take me to write the book. Again, a little weird because I was given like 6 to 8 months, but I've written all my books in 6 weeks. Now, I will tell writers this. You're always writing. Once you put it down, you're documenting what you're writing. But if you're a writer, you're thinking about it, you're processing it. For whatever reason, my pattern is I process and then in 6 weeks, I'm ready to jot it down. So that book, which came out 2004, the same month as Bill Clinton's autobiography, and some people had jokes about that because for obvious reasons, because my book is kind of considered like a sexual autobiography, and we know Bill had some of his stuff going on. And so the book is mostly about the consequences and lessons that I learned from some of the decisions that I made as it relates to relationships and sex. It's not a whole lot about sex. It was a Christian publisher, but it was a lot about just the consequences and the processing of that. The thing that I adore about my first book is if and when you ever read the book, I addressed that I had sexual molestation as a child, some other things that led to me battling with self-esteem. So one of the most amazing things about that book was on the cover of my book. And I will brag a little bit because it's a dope book cover. You know what I'm saying? It was beautiful. Like, so when my editing team was like, we think you should be on the book. My brother named the book. I wanted to name it The Broken Coke Bottle. And my editors were like, we can tell you're a poet. Because that's the other thing. I started as a poet and then became a writer. And they were like, that's definitely a poetic title. Nobody's going to understand what you're talking about. So my brother was like, why don't you just name it Inside of Me? Everything that's happening to you is inside of you. Indeed. And then they were like, well, if the book's about being inside of you, why don't you just have a picture of yourself? So that was just so affirming for me to be on the cover of my own book. The other thing that was really beautiful about that experience was so shout out to Kara Baker, shout out to Kyle Chowning. There's one more person I'm supposed to shout out, and you know who you are, and I apologize, I forgot your name. I had a great, great, great team. Another tip for writers. Some of the hardest decisions you'll ever make is picking a spouse, your tax preparer, an editor. When it comes to your editor, so shout out to Kristen Whittlesey, who is my editor at the Tennessean. You don't even really realize they were there. That's a good editor. An editor that changes your voice is often like an editor that really wants to be a writer and they're taking their angst out on you in your work. So my editing team, my marketing team, they were very much like Shellie, just be Shellie. That was another great experience about the book. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to get advance. I did get that. The thing that everybody should keep in mind with advances is it's very similar like the music industry. Like you're getting money ahead of time for writing the book, but you've got to make that money back before you get more money, right? Like if they already gave you $5,000, the minute your book starts selling, they're still waiting to recoup that $5,000 and then you start making money. So keep that in mind if they give you an advance. I think that answered your question, right?
Oh, it definitely did. Yes. Okay. And you kind of, gave a nice overview of everything, how it came to be, and also just, the process itself. And I do agree. I mean, having the right editor is a huge decision to make. You need to make sure it's somebody who understands your message, who knows what they're doing, of course, who has experience in the field that you're writing about too. At Authors on Mission, we also, in addition to publishing services, we also offer angel writing services and editing.
Okay.
So, that's one thing I do, and I know how important it is to be looking at it through a lens of who's the author writing to, what are the pain points that the audience is looking for, that sort of thing, to really, get a good idea of in your writing. Would you say that when writing, of course, with this first book or all of the others, were there a lot of edits made regarding the voice, or what happened to be the most challenging in terms
something about even when I was in high school and college, I don't draft, and I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying I don't. I'm gonna write it and I'm done with it. So every time I've written a book, I've just asked people, can you just catch literal errors? But I like to write kind of in streams and consciousness and prose. So I don't really like AP, like I don't want to style because again, I started as a poet. So yeah, some of the sentences are run-on sentences on purpose. I'm gonna M-dash the hell out of stuff.
Right.
Don't put commas everywhere, and I actually hate commas before ands. So it's not hard because I think every team I've worked with, they actually like the fact that I'm not meticulous because I like to write very free form, but it can be challenging just in the sense that if you're a technical editor and you're working with me, it's going to be a little challenging, right? Because it's like, oh, she just M-dashed the hell out of this whole chapter. I did on purpose. So that can be challenging in a way, but I think my advice to that is don't just hire an editor. You know, like when you do online dating, please don't go on a date with a guy that you just matched with. Like, talk to him on the phone for a while. FaceTime each other, make sure you're not catfishing each other. Same thing with an editor. Like, interview them, vet them, get to know like if you gel. Because it won't just be about their work. It'll be about if you get along. And they feel good with your personality, you feel good with their personality. And I was fortunate, we'll talk about the middle book, which was Pure Heart. It was a little challenging because I was hired by another company to write the book. But everyone else I've worked with, they got to know me. And they were like, oh, edit Shellie how she talks. Okay.
Right, definitely. And that's exactly what I was saying before too. You know, you have to vet the person, understand them, and also know that they're willing to, you know, kind of play by your rules too, right? Because, you know,
right.
Somebody who's too rigid and like the standard conventions, it's going to clash. So you need to find the right person.
Balance is right, because you got to respect the fact that an editor is an editor. So sometimes the editor's like, okay, Shellie, this was a run-on sentence paragraph. We got to put a period somewhere.
Yeah.
because everybody doesn't know your personality. So you don't want to make it hard for them to read it. So the writer you have to trust each other.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, kind of basing it off that, you know, you have mentioned a couple times that you are a poet at heart and that the book does reflect that. Yeah, as I was scrolling through inside of me, the poem Laying Her to Rest kind of stood out. It was right in the beginning pages of the book when I was looking through it. Really also is something to talk about because it addresses letting go of a past version of yourself. So, you know, my question to you in context of this first book before we move on to the others is, how important is that process of release and personal growth and healing?
I do think, even though I'm a marriage life coach, and let me be honest about that too, I have been a PCC for only a couple of years. We're going to veer off but come back to the middle. Part of the reason why a lot of people say they're life coaches is it's only been until recently we've been required to get certified. And we should get certified.
Yeah.
So even though I'm a marriage life coach, I will give you this advice too. Therapist, counselor, coach. Ask people, if you're considering going into therapy, if they've ever seen a counselor, therapist, or coach. And the answer should be yes. Don't go to someone who's never been in therapy themselves. That's like a whole nother conversation. But one, it helps them to better understand the process. Two, just because we work in the mental health field doesn't mean we don't have our own mental health stuff. You know, so seeing someone gives you accountability before you hold someone else accountable. And where that's going with your question is, because I'm so open with a lot of my stuff, like platform that I write for is called XO Nicole. And a few years ago, I wrote an article about the fact that I've had sex with 14 people. And my editor was like, this is great. You sure you want to publish it? Yeah, I'm sure I want to publish it. Aside from the fact that I do have a therapist friend, which is what I call her, to hold me accountable while I'm working with people, part of the reason why I think I am as healthy, balanced, internally peaceful as I am is because I write about my business so much. Like, a part of what I think keeps people from progressing is they do hold it in. And I get that everybody won't be my personality, right? I told you my mom was like, you came out the womb telling all your business. But I do think for me, writing is very cathartic. Once I write it, I have released it. And I think that's a part of the reason why I'm okay with it. Because if I'm ready to write it, then I'm ready to let it go. And that was a lot of what Inside of Me was about. Like, I was 29, almost 30. My birthday's in June. So I was just about to turn 30 when the book came out. And everything that happened in that book was prior to 30. So I realized once I wrote it, I was like, oh, I'm kind of at peace with it. So even when the book came out, and people like, for example, one of the stories in the book is I was once a wedding planner sleeping with the groom. It's in the book. I had already made peace with that because I wrote about it. But people were just learning it, right? So they're like, girl, how could you tell anybody something like that? Because I'd already written it. I'd already released it. You're just catching up. But I already know. So that's kind of always been my journey. Like writing is release.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there, and in the fact that, you've already gone through it and, experienced this, made peace with it, and you have to be ready for, readers to be maybe shocked or willing to, learn more, that sort of,
Right.
Even if you release it, you're going to have to still touch upon it if you're writing about
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Even to this day, especially when my third book came out, because Inside of Me, Lessons of Lust, Love, and Redemption is it's 20 years old. Some people don't know about it, right? So I'm protective of her in the sense of like, I see my books as my children, but she's an adult child. So whatever your opinions are, it's fine. I just hope you get something out of the story. Like you can feel about me however you feel, because I feel okay about me. But I hope you got something out of it while you're in shock mode or disgust mode or disappointed mode or whatever mode. It's lessons, right? That's why it's titled that. It's a series of lessons.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of transitioning then from this first book to the other books that we were going to touch upon in this show, I'm wondering, will you introduce us to the next step on the list?
So Pure Heart. That's so funny. Tell me the subtitle. I forgot.
I have here, it's, oh shoot, where do we have it here?
Sexual integrity. Talking about sexual integrity.
Yeah, I have it right here. It's Pure Heart, A Woman's Guide to Sexual Integrity.
Yeah, so that's the second book. So when I was writing for Relevant, remember, they don't have the publishing house anymore, but they published several books. And one of the books was an organization called Triple X Church. And Craig Gross was the co-founder of Triple X Church. We ended up bonding just because we both had books. And I went on his page to say, I don't see any female presence or Black people on here. Clearly I fit both bills. So I came on there as a writer. And he ended up getting a deal through Baker Books, which was a Christian publisher. And they wanted a female voice for one of the 3 books. And so I was the female voice for that book. Grateful for the opportunity, for sure. Again, in advance. That was great. Baker didn't know me though. So I was kind of work for hire, right? It's my book in the sense of clearly my name is on it, but I didn't get to choose the cover. I would have never picked that cover. I didn't choose the title. That's why I said, what's the title again? Because I would never pick that. I would never say something's Pure Heart, like ever. And because they didn't know me, they didn't really know my voice. And so Craig kind of had to be the in-between. So there would be some kickback on some things, and I'd be like, well, did y'all hire me or not? And sometimes Craig would have to smooth it over either between me and the editor or by the editor and me. And so I think that experience is a big part of the reason why I'm not big on ghostwriting. It wasn't ghostwritten, right, because my name's on it, but it kind of felt like it was. And I've had so many ghostwriting opportunities over the years that I've turned down. Checks like 30 grand on the front. I don't think I'll ever ghostwrite. I'm saying I don't think. Economy gets weird sometimes, but I don't want to. One, because I like having my distinctive voice and I don't want to tweak it. And when you're ghostwriting, you need to, because you're someone else's voice. Two, I know many people who got a nice check on the front, but you got one check. And then some of these authors have sold millions and millions and millions of copies. And it would have been smarter of you to get some back end on the book. And a lot of times when they hire you as a ghostwriter, you're not going to get the back end. And then the second thing is it's just a lot of work to build someone else's platform. So there's the aside of that. I'm not interested. So that was kind of my experience with Pure Heart. It felt like high-end ghostwriting in a way.
Understood. And it's kind of interesting to hear about that side of writing, of course, because, anybody listening today, they're writing their own books for the most part, probably, right? So do you have any advice for somebody who's working under a company like that, writing for somebody else?
Please, shout out to Ron Stewart, a lawyer that recently passed. And he read my publishing contract. And I love him for that. Have someone read your contracts if you're going to go into that field. Because the checks look really good on the front. They really do. You kind of have to be writing for the Joel Osteens. Like, that's somebody immediately comes to mind. Because he has a ghostwriter. Joyce Meyer has a ghostwriter. T.D. Jakes has a ghostwriter. These people have ghostwriters. It sounds really nice to get a $15,000, $30,000 check. Customarily, they're multi-million bestsellers, right? But that's not going to be the norm. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. But even if you're like, well, 4,000 is really good, it's still a lot of work. And you're not really getting credit. Like sometimes your name, it's like sometimes they're gracious enough to say as told to by, but a lot of times they literally hire you as work for hire. So right. That's one thing you got to keep in mind. Like, do you want to do all that work and get no credit? If the check is all you want, go forth. And remember, you got to pay taxes on that check too. That's another thing we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's another factor.
Yeah, but definitely get a publishing lawyer to read your contract. It cannot be said enough. Please. You're not going to catch everything like you think you will. And then make sure why you're doing it. And then make sure if it's worth it. Your time is valuable. So to spend all that time to write someone else's book and then no one ever knew that you did it. Sometimes you have to sign NDAs too, and you can't even tell you did it. So many things to think about. And for me, none of that's worth it. Like I've had some nice offers. And I've shared the names with a few people and they're like, you're crazy. And I'm like, am I? Because I mean, if my name's not anywhere on there, the bragging right of saying I ghost wrote for someone I can't even tell I ghost wrote for, was it even worth it?
Right, definitely. And well, as a ghostwriter myself, we call ourselves angel writers here at Authors on Mission. I do enjoy what I do, and I really much find it worth it, even if my name's not on it, because I'm helping other people get their writing out, and I get to meet really cool people, hear their stories, but I can see how there is two sides of it for sure. And
I'm glad to hear you share your side of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, so you tell me, because I don't see pros in it. What are pros in it to you?
Well, again, I got to meet people from all over the world, all different walks of life. I get to learn new things every day. I started off writing romance books, and it was fun. It was silly. But, now I get to write, for politicians, for companies, and of CEOs of big companies, whistleblowers to the government, like really cool things I'm getting to learn and know about that I wouldn't have ever researched otherwise. So
are you as told to by, or are you literally not present?
I'm not, no, under NDA for sure. So one day I'll write my own book and, write about experiences and that sort of thing. But it goes both ways. I would say that to our listeners today. So, take, Shelley's words of advice as well. Definitely the contracts, like you mentioned, and, see what works best for you, because everybody has different writing styles and preferences.
Agreed. So you're a ghostwriter. What did you say you all call it?
We call it angel writing instead of
okay. So you're an angel writer for a living, or one of the things that you do is angel write?
Well, yeah, I mean, not to get too much into myself rather than, you and your books, but
I'm curious.
Here we do, angel writing, editing, marketing, publishing,
Okay, it's the whole thing. It's
content
the whole.
creation. Yeah. So there's
Okay.
a bunch into it. So I enjoy every aspect of it. I get to dabble in many different writings and meet new people all the time. So it's great.
Yeah, one of the people, like I said, I've got someone in my life that does it, and they're doing it purely for the money, so they like that. I actually like building my platform, so I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean
But
the
if
money
you're
is part of it too, but
yeah,
it's
the
more
money.
it's rewarding too.
So
Um,
that was a pure heart experience. Like it's definitely wasn't. All of my experiences have been blessings in the sense of, again, not really having to chase anything down, and um, they went fairly smoothly. But pure heart is where I feel like I'm the least present. So for that reason, it's number 3
well, with
on the
that being
list.
said, then I do think, maybe it's a good time to transition over to your other written book, the
Okay.
Inside of Me 2.0, My Story with a 20-Year Lens. So what led you to bringing this book out after so many years? And this came out for everybody listening today last October. So nice, fresh off the press to go check out.
So that was a totally different experience. I wanted to write it because of what the title is. So the 2.0 is a play off of upgrading and then 20 years, right? So I turned 50 last year. When I wrote my first book, I was turning 30. And I just felt like a real urge, like you need to tell these past 20 years. It's funny because that took 6 weeks too. When I initially started writing it, I thought I was literally upgrading the first book. But then as I was writing it's its own book for sure. And a lot of that is just dealing with relationships from a different angle. I was abstinent for most of the time in between the first and third book. And that's a whole nother story too. So there wasn't a whole lot of sex to talk about. There wasn't a whole lot of dating to talk about. But there was a lot of unpacking about how I even got in some of the positions I got into 20 years ago. So there's a lot of reflecting on like my relationship with my dad, my relationship with my mom, my relationship with the church. It's amazing how much spiritual narcissism is addressed in the book. Lots of narcissism is talked about in the book. This book is more like what brought me to who I am now. I do address like the relationships with the children of my abortions. I update that. Like there's certain things people who read the first book, if you're wanting some peace and clarity, they're addressed in the book. But the level of relationships have expanded for sure. What made the publishing experience different is I'm pretty confident I could have gotten another publisher. I chose not to for a few reasons. When my first book came out, I'm telling you, the music industry and the book publishing industry have so much in common. And I keep bringing that up because I live in Nashville. Nashville's Music City. Music City because of Fifth Jubilee singers, not country music. Y'all go Google that. But I do live in Music City. So a lot of my friends are musicians. And we share that. Like the amount of money, one of my closest friends, 97, I think, he had produced a song for Heather Headley and they got a really nice check. But if you talk to publishers now, they're getting like maybe a third of what he got at the most. Book publishing is similar. Like when my first book came out, it was amazing to go and see it displayed in Borders. We don't even have a Borders anymore.
Yeah.
Or I could go into Barnes and Noble and see it. We don't have a Barnes and Noble. I think we got one, like 2 in the city, but a lot of them are gone. So the whole concept of book publishing has changed and the book industry's changed. So one of the things I often tell people who keep shopping it's kind of like what you said about angel writing has different perspectives. This is about to have a different perspective too. But the reason why I didn't want to find a publisher for the third book is I'd already done that. So I've done it twice. I negotiated 15% for my first book. At the time, you're averaging like 9%. Even some of the best sellers got 9%. I also negotiated the cover of my book, which is rare. My book alone was like, the cover I think was 13 grand. But and what do you mean by negotiate, Shellie? I said, well, after the first print run, can I have the cover? And can I print other releases? So I did print the book. This is in its third print. The second time I printed The First Inside of Me, this guy named Brad Fenton, and I can't remember his company, but he would publish books that ran out of print. So we did a run, but he still took a percentage off of that, right?
Right.
Inside of Me now is in its third print, and it's in its third print just on Amazon, just so people can have access to the book. Again, publishing has changed so much. You would never be able to imagine you could just go on Amazon and throw a book up, which now you actually can, everybody. You don't have to wait for someone to publish your book. You can go on Amazon and publish your own book. So anyway, fast forward to this book, because it's written so... A Christian publisher wouldn't have published it because I'm speaking very freely. A secular publisher wouldn't have published it because I do make a lot of Christian references. So I was like, I need to publish it myself. So I went through a company called Gatekeeper Publishing, which was a very unique but fun experience. Shout out to Katie, who was my editor. You pay for getting the book published on the front end, and then they do everything on the back end. I would do that again. One, because a lot of the money you make off the book is way more than 15%. They definitely work for you. You don't work for them. So, working with Katie, it was just literally like, again, I speak very prose, so she's just like, well, what edits do you want? Now the editor, I will say this, if you go through that, because there's a lot of companies that do that now, where they'll publish the book for you, they'll lay out the book for you, they'll edit the book for you, and they have a marketing team. They're doing. There's similar companies that do that. The thing you got to keep in mind, though, is that a lot of people on their team were work for hire. So like the editor that I had, she didn't know me from Adam. And we actually butt heads quite a bit. The reason why it worked out is because Katie was in the middle of us. Katie had gotten to know me, but the editor didn't know me. So I kicked that book back so many times because she was literally in a style format, and I'm not a style writer. So that's something you have to keep in mind when you hire a company like that. I didn't use their team. Their team had because they have a marketing department, you could hire them to design your book. I didn't want to do that. I got my own person to design the book. It was a lot of freedom. I have no regrets going that route, because then it taught me a lot about like what your company does. I'm learning it myself, right? When I was with the First Inside of Me book, they just showed me the cover. They were like, give me a picture. And then I had some say, but I didn't know anything about the layout and the design and the dimensions of the book, and the book's going to bleed off the side. I didn't know anything about any of that. This time I learned that because I had some say in the design of the book and the font. That was even simple things like choosing the font, because so many times you're learning like what standard fonts are for books and what's easier for people to read. Even if you like this font, it's easier for people to read this and the size and whatever. So just having the creative freedom is why I'm really glad I went this route. I think I paid $3,500. I think. But it was worth it. Not one regret.
Good. Thank you for the whole lay down there. And it does sound like if the company that you did this with was very similar to ours. And so I do appreciate those tips for everyone trying to, figure out what's right for them, just like we said before. It's some really, insightful things, definitely. I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about the content of that book now. What can readers expect if they, open up this one, and what can they be excited for learning? I know you said it's a little bit more just in depth than the first one, but surely there's a lot of new exciting things that they could be looking out for, correct?
I mean, if you're someone who is at a crossroads with your spirituality, you'd want to get the book. If you're someone who's trying to figure out your boundaries with family, you should get the book. If you're someone who is realizing there's some people in your life that are no longer serving you and you're not sure what to do about it, you should get the book. I'm amazed, and not in a condescending way, just amazed. I'm amazed how many people I come across who just still don't know their purpose in life. I'm very clear about my purpose in life. And a tip that I often give people is if you can't explain your purpose in 3 words or 3 phrases, you don't know your purpose in life. Like, you should be able to, like, I'm here to do this. And purpose literally means what you were created to do. If you're on the fence about that, I address a lot about my purpose. So it helps with that. If you're trying to figure out how to make some peace with some relational decisions that you've made, I touch on that. Like, most of the characters in the book, Inside of Me 1 and Inside of Me 2, there's peace. Peace doesn't mean that we are all in relationship, but there's peace. There's peace in the sense of, like, if I see you in the mall, we can hug it out. We may not exchange numbers, but it was genuinely good to see. There's peace like that. And if you are trying to figure out what forgiveness looks like, you'll want to get the book. The Inside of Me, the first Inside of Me, I was addressing a lot of things I should forgive others and myself for. This book addresses how I did that.
Right. Okay. So it kind of goes another layer down, right? Not just like that you
100%.
Right. Exactly. So that's some amazing tips right there to anybody listening. If you do find yourself in that situation or in those shoes, pick up the book, learn a little bit more, especially because you've already offered us a lot of insight here on the show. So we could definitely learn even more by picking those up. We're going to have the links in the description box of this podcast. So anybody listening at the end, you can go ahead and click it, check it out. And Shellie, how else can people get in touch with you? For example, if they're interested in maybe your counseling services or advice for writers in general or anything else, how can they find you?
I don't do social media.
No, okay.
So
some websites perhaps?
And lots of peace and freedom in saying that. Yes. So at some point I do need to resurrect a website just to make it easier for people to find me, I guess. For now, MISSNOSIPHO, which is Miss Nosipo. Sidebar, my mother, her husband, and my brother lived in South Africa. Nosipo is the name her husband gave me. It means God's blessing to those she's around. So it's just stuck. Because everybody's like, can you just have like Shellie Warren at Gmail? But I like what Nosipo means, so I've always kept it. So you can email me there. But that's kind of the only place to find me. And even that, I think if there's something else I want to tell writers is like Alice Randall, who is a really well-known writer here in Nashville. Years ago, I interviewed her and I said, well, how do you just become a writer? Because it is weird. Like, how do you just become a writer for a living? Good Lord. And she said, just write. Like, if it's not for someone now, it's for someone 50 years from now. Just write it down. And that's always stayed with me. And the thing is, the advice I would give people is, if you're writing, you are a writer. Some of us are published writers. Some of us are paid writers. But if you're writing, you're a writer. So don't ever ask, like, how do I become a writer? You write. It's how you become a writer, right?
Right.
And your gift really, that scripture gets quoted a lot and it's out of context. It's really saying a literal gift you give the king gives you access to his kingdom. But your gift does make room for you. Like, I would have never thought. It's amazing, even like, let's go with XO Nicole, for example, which is a Black woman's lifestyle magazine online. I've been writing for them, I think, 7 years now. And I will tell you this, if you want to be a writer for a living, the market's ever changing. Like, when I first came on the scene, it was very common to get 50 cents or $1 a word. I am going to call this company out because I'm irritated. Upwork will sometimes list gigs where we need you to write 500-word articles and we'll give you $10. And Upwork gets a percentage of that $10. That's how much writing has changed since I started, right? So it's amazing to be on a platform that just, like, it's rare to be a writer and you don't do social media. A lot of times they require it because they need you to push your work. So for me to be writing for a publication that's like, oh, it's fine, you don't do social media, just be Shellie. But the reason why I'm telling that story is if you just write and you're committed to writing and you're clear about what your platform and purpose is, doors will open. Promise you that. Doors open for me all the time. And I went a very atypical route.
Right, definitely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us because, you've offered tips on all different sorts of writing today in the show. And you can, between your own writing for others, or of course, even hiring people on your behalf to help out. So, to anybody listening, take this in, weigh the pros and the cons, figure out what's best for you. But at the end of the day, you become a writer just by writing, just like you said, Shellie. So I do appreciate that. It's a great tip. So yeah, that being said, we're going to have the links to your books in the description box, in addition to that email address. So feel free to reach out, check out the books, everybody. It's really important that we all hone in these messages today. Shellie, thank you for sharing these insights, these experiences, this wisdom with our audience. It's been a really insightful conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. And to all of our listeners, I hope this conversation has reinforced what Authors on Mission is all about, connecting with experts who not only excel in their fields, but on our mission to share their knowledge, transform lives, and of course, enjoy writing as well. So Shellie has demonstrated you don't have to be famous to have a story worth telling or expertise worth sharing. You just have to go ahead and start writing. So you can find Shellie's books online. We're going to have the links to those, like I said. And other than that, thank you for listening. Until next time, keep pursuing your mission with passion and purpose. Keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. Have a great day, everybody. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.